But while I talk about the immigration issue too, I've been engaged in that pretty intensively over the years. And I go down to the border and watch what goes on there and take the red carpet tour. Then I go back and show up unannounced in civvies and, I act like a regular guy. Then I talk to Border Patrol agents. And sometime back, I stopped down, this is just a few years ago, I stopped down at Sassabee, Arizona at a port of entry. And I got out and I started to talk to the port of entry agents there, the Custom Border Protection people. And at a certain point, I decided I better blow my cover, because it gets to the point of when it borders on dishonesty, I'm going to tell them who I am. And so I did. And the border agent said, "Oh, I can't talk to you. I can't talk to you." And I said, "Okay, well," so I go to the next guy, and he says, "I can't talk to you either. I can't talk to a congressman. Talk to Mike. Mike is ready to retire and he has terminal cancer. He'll talk to you." And the guy's name was Mike Kring. And he talked to me, and I found out a lot of things. Most of them I don't want to go into. I mean, some of them were just some gory details of what he'd seen down there in all his years. But while that was going on, he had an interruption of a phone call, and he came back to me in a few minutes and said, "There's going to be a helicopter coming here to do a dust-off, for there's been a knife fight across the border in Mexico. A Mexican ambulance is going to come into the United States. There's a wounded individual in that, and I called U.S. ambulances to come down so we can get oxygen on him right away until the helicopter gets here, and then we're going to life flight him out to Tucson." I didn't know that we brought people into the United States that are in drug battles in Mexico and put them into the healthcare system in the United States and paid for it. We do. They are paroled into the United States. That's a technical term that Homeland Security uses. We pay their hospital bills, we patch them up, we send them back to Mexico. I saw that happen, and we did get engaged. I had an EMT with me, a paramedic, more technically correct, who helped when they came across in the Mexican ambulance. The only thing in there for equipment was about 2 sets of gloves and a little bit of gauze, nothing else. And nothing else in there. It was a meat wagon is what it was. And we put oxygen on him. He was stabbed in the liver and stabilized him, and he lived. And I went to the hospital the next day to visit him and to see how we had done it. I don't want to let people die. I'm not proposing that. I don't know how you say no in a circumstance like that, but I just want you to know we do it. And then I sat down with the accountant for the hospital there at Tucson University Hospital and started to talk through the costs of providing health care for people that are in the United States illegally. And that hospital was $15.5 million that they spent annually to provide health care to people that are here illegally. And so today, and I was doing Lou Dobbs for this reason, I released a report that I had requested from the General Accountability Office because of this. They were, the testimony before the Immigration Committee was constantly how many people died in the Arizona desert while they were sneaking into the United States. And that number would go from 250 a year up to 450 a year, even a little more than that. And so it's heart-wrenching to think about people dying in the desert, and that's true, and I share that. But I began to think about the other side of that equation. If you've lost a friend that's been murdered by an illegal, and ever had that equation to wonder, wouldn't that friend be alive today if we'd enforced our immigration laws? And it's happened. It happens really every day in this country. We have people who are killed at the hands of those who are here illegally, and if we enforced our borders and enforced our immigration laws, they wouldn't be here to commit those crimes generally against Americans. So this report that has been in the works for 3 years, I rolled it out today, and it works out to be this. These are minimum numbers. They aren't, this isn't, it's no less than this. Today we have in our prisons in America no less than 25,064 criminal aliens who are incarcerated and were arrested for murder. For every murder, there's at least one victim. So that's at least 25,064 graves in America, mostly of Americans who died at the hands of criminal aliens who should, for the most part, not have been here in the United States in the first place. If we'd enforced our immigration laws, almost every one of those people would be alive today that are today buried. That's multiples of the victims of September 11th. That's how bad it is, and we don't quantify it. We take that hit within our families and our neighborhoods and we move on. And for me, it was focused when there was a school bus accident up in southwest Minnesota, and 4 students on that bus were killed by an illegal who had been stopped at least 3 times before and gone through the motions and released because they didn't want to go through the trouble of enforcing the law. And to think that some people are trying to convince the parents of those 4 students that were killed in that bus that their kids would still be dead, even though we might have enforced the law and deported the individual that caused the accident. You cannot make that argument. You cannot make the argument to the people that have lost loved ones, and we have to enforce the law. So I say this: build a fence, a wall, and a fence on our southern border. We can do that for a couple $1 million a mile. We're spending $6 million a mile now, and we're getting about 25% effectiveness for the money that we're spending. We can ramp that up to 90-some% effectiveness. We can force all traffic through the ports of entry, and that's what we need to do. And then shut off the jobs magnet. A jobs magnet can be shut off by passing a legislation that I have called the New Idea Act. What it does, it brings the IRS into the enforcement and denies the business expense of wages paid to illegals. So that if an employer had a lot of illegals working for them and they paid $1 million in wages, business expense, the IRS would go in and do the audit and say, sorry, you can't deduct that $1 million because you paid it to illegals, you knew or should have known, and we'll give you safe harbor if you use E-Verify. But the $1 million goes over here on the profit side and becomes taxable. So interest and penalty and tax liability turns your $10 an hour illegal into a $16 an hour illegal. And that gives the employer the incentive to clean up his own workforce because you never know when the IRS is going to show up, I can tell you that.